Welcome to the Selling Show, where we unpack, repack, and break down exactly how top experts sell their ideas, their value, and their services. This is your host, David Newman, and you are in the right place if you want better clients, bigger deals, and higher fees. Scaling, my friends, scaling. Man, oh man, you spend 3 minutes on social media, everyone's going to pop out of the woodwork saying, you want to scale your business, you want to scale your empire. A lot of it is horse manure, but I got the real deal. I don't know how I landed this guy, but Mr. Josh Hotsenpiller, welcome to the Selling Show.
Oh my goodness, it's a pleasure to be here, my friend, and I'm looking forward to sharing time with you and your amazing audience.
So there's a ton of messaging. There's a ton of noise out there about scaling this, scaling that. Very few of those so-called gurus have actually done it the way that you have done it multiple times, not just for your own businesses, for the businesses that you coach and consult for. Before we jump into that, though, you do have an absolutely fascinating story. Give us the Josh journey and what brought you to the work that you're doing today, and what were some interesting stops along the way.
Yeah, I mean, it's been such a beautiful tapestry of life experience. I started off the son of a preacher man. I got my divinity degree in New York. I started a church in my apartment at 23 years old, grew it to over 1,000 people, felt like I wanted to see more of the world and experience more. And I made the jump to software. So I think I might be one of the few guys that went from a divinity degree into the computer science world, but ended up starting Profits for Purpose was my first company. We helped primarily Fortune 1000 companies mobilize employees to give time and money back to their communities. We had almost 1 million global employees accessing our platform. So groups like GoPro, Estee Lauder, Staples, NFL were all clients. Sold that company, went on to build CrowdHub and Wisdom Capture, which were custom software and film agencies. Worked with brands like Visa, Weight Watchers, United Nations, HP, building custom software, custom media. In both those businesses, I exited with new CEOs and they pay me residual income. So I've kind of had some really unique experiences of exiting with, significant dollars, exiting with amazing leaders where companies are still paying me monthly because of my ownership. And then during COVID, I had a new experience where I raised $15 million from the largest software-only VC in the world, Insights Partners. And that was really where I cut my teeth. I'm going to call it hyperscale. We did $8 million of new business from 0 to 8 million in 14 months. We went from 0 employees. We hired 68 people in 58 days. And we went straight into the COVID world in the virtual events. And I really learned. I had built businesses to several $1 million, still a little bit of that, chief rainmaker. As long as I got into the room, I could sell. I'd never really understood how to scale a business. I understood how to sell a business. I understood how to sell a product. I even understood how to sell it in a way that could build a several $1 million company. I didn't know how to scale a business where there was actual fundamentals that were in place that would allow a business to scale irregardless of me. And that was the really thing that I had to learn through Insights. They made me learn these motions. And ultimately, that's what created Scale Factor, where once I spent 4 years with portfolio executives that had scaled massive organizations, they came in and said, hey, from start to finish, this is how we're going to put these motions in. I got to learn them, adjacent of each other, and then package it together to say, man, from start to finish, this is how you scale a business.
So much to unpack there. So I want to maybe split this out into 2 tracks, sure, because there's one kind of conversation which is centered around what I've done, and I certainly want to circle back to all of that. But the really fascinating part of your story, to me anyway, is not what I've done, but what I learned. So a lot of folks listening, they're like, oh, here's Josh. He's super successful, buying and selling businesses like we trade bubblegum cards. He must have some special knowledge. So like the church guy somehow got 3 MBAs, studied with Warren Buffett, went off to some monastery and studied every back issue of Forbes and Fortune magazine. How did you learn not only the selling part, but how did you learn this business building part to have done it multiple times? Like, who were some of your mentors? What was some of your learning like?
Yeah. So one of the most significant mentors I've had, if for folks listening, you'd be shocked at the people you meet when you just put yourself out there and try to do some things, but I'll walk you through as many as you want. But one of the most significant ones was the former global CEO of Burger King. And I met him through a business psychology coach in Southern California. I met this business psychology coach on a train. So just to be clear, a lot of times it's like, oh, you had some special inroad. I don't have that. I can't be like you. I was on a train going to sell software. I got on in San Diego. I was going to LA. We're trying to sell a deal. And there's this guy on the train. We strike up a conversation. And we just start talking business and life. He's a psychology coach. And he goes, there's somebody I want you to meet. So I just want to stop by saying, next time you're on a train, next time you're on a subway, next time you're never hesitate to introduce yourself to somebody because you don't know. I meet Jeff. Jeff's the former global CEO of Burger King. We hit it off and he just began to pour wisdom into me. One of the biggest things he taught me was the pre-mortem. A lot of us in business do postmortems. We look at something afterwards and go, why didn't it work? What can I learn? He would always say, what's the pre-mortem? I want you to come up with 10 reasons why this isn't going to work. And I want you to come up with the solutions and workshop them before you get started. And that was one of the biggest things I learned was pre-mortems. And to this day, everything I do, I pre-mortem. And what we do as leaders, we don't like to look at negative. We don't like to look at fear. We don't like to look at doubt. We want to avoid pain at all costs. It's a human condition. That's not what great leaders do. Great leaders courageously look at what could be threats and flip them into opportunities. And that was one of the greatest things that Jeff taught me. So that was a huge mentor in my life that taught me, and he would just go on to teach me so many different things. So that's one cool story.
Do you love selling? I know, me too. Do you hate selling? I know, me too. Listen, fantastic sales book you got to get your hands on. How do I know? It's mine. That's how. Do It Selling is now available for sale. Grab your copy, grab all the bonuses, all the companion tools, all the training, all the videos that go with it at doitselling.com. See you over there. Now, the other thing, because I really want to democratize and popularize this whole concept, because that's what your current business is all about, is, hey, we're going to teach you how to install this sort of scaling operating system, if you will. Right. So beyond the mentors, when you said, I knew how to sell the products and services, I knew how to sell the businesses, but early on, I did not know how to scale. So do you think some of those acquisitions were some other CEO or some other investor looking at Josh's business and saying, dude, I know how to scale this, sell it to me, and we're going to take this to the moon. Tell me a little bit about what you learned from those acquisitions before you knew about selling.
Here's a hysterical, painful first world problem story. Our first business we sold, gosh, when was this? This was a decade ago. The space started to commoditize. Software that we were selling for $100,000, like overnight went to selling for like $10,000 to $12,000 because instead of selling software, people were basically giving the software away and they were monetizing financial transactions behind it. So somebody came in and said, forget the software. The value is the users transacting. We're going to be a bank. We're going to be a transaction company. So overnight, our business went from selling for $100,000 to $10,000. So we're like, we got to get out of this thing, or we're not going to be around. So we ended up selling for a few $1 million. And I want to say we got like a 2.8x multiple. And honestly, David, we were like, hey, we were young. It was like enough money to buy our first home in Southern California that you have to actually have quite a bit of money to put down. And so, we were like, hey, look, we're all walking away with, $1 million. How cool. That company held our book of business for less than 9 months and sold at a 14x.
Wow.
They bought us at a 2x and 9 months later sold at a 14x. And we were, embarrassed. It's a first world problem, right? We walked with $1 million each, but it was like, they just sold our business for 10x what they bought us at. True story.
So did they see something different in the business, or did they do something different over that 9 months?
No, what they were able to do was they were able to transact the financial. So this is what's interesting about scale. We were selling a software where it was, hey, for every user, we'll charge you $3. So we would make $3 either. They came in and said, hey, for every user, we'll charge you 50 cents. But they did the math that their financial contribute, because they were giving donations to like nonprofits, they would make 5% on every dollar that was transacted. So we would sell a software that had a value of, let's say, 200 grand. They would go in and they would get a customer, like a customer value to us was like 200 grand. To them, it could be $1 million because they were transacting dollars. We were selling software. So there was a greater revenue model, a bigger revenue model that they had built that we were unaccustomed to. We weren't even aware of. So yes, they saw the user and saw a bigger share of wallet is the phrase we use a lot in Scale Factor is they said, wait a minute, we can get more dollars per user if we do this than if we do that. And they just had a bigger vision on how to get a share of wallet from the user than we did.
Really interesting. So as a serial entrepreneur and now an advisor to other companies, I'm curious, are there signposts on the road that would say, okay, this situation, we got to quit. We got to get out of this business. So there are 3 paths that I want to ask you about: quit, iterate, and accelerate.
Yep.
So it's like the old Kenny Rogers song, know when to hold them, know when to fold them. How do you decide now, and with your clients, how do you decide if it's a quit, iterate, or accelerate?
So I have the incredible opportunity to be mentored by the co-founder of Insights Partners. It's a multiple $100 billion fund. It's the largest software-only VC in the world. And the co-founder, that Jerry Murdoch, was a mentor of mine for quite a season. And he would say this to me all the time. He says, businesses are like robbing banks. The footprint out is different on every one of them. And you got to get out before you get caught, because everyone gets caught. Every business gets caught eventually. You just want to get out before it does. So the old Blockbuster stories, the Toys R Us, do you think these are staples and they're gone? They got caught. And somebody got out before they got caught, made a bunch of money. Some people stayed in and got in too late and got caught. And I remember him saying that to me. So I would say this to folks: your business is going to get caught. That's how capitalism works. Somebody's always disrupting your vertical. Somebody's always creating something new. You're going to get caught. You got to get out before you do. I think one of the hardest things about business owners is loyalty and identity to your business. When you can't separate loyalty and identity from your business, you're going to get caught. It's too personal. And it's hard not to. It's so hard not to, because we're human and we're passionate. We birthed this and it's my child and all these things. The problem is you're going to get caught. And so what you really got to do is say, get people in your life that don't have a big financial stake or any financial stake in your business and listen to them. What am I not seeing? I've got a guy I mentored for a while, and I kept saying, this isn't going to work. Here's why this isn't going to work. You need to rethink this. And he just couldn't separate himself from his own ideas. And none of the ideas worked. And he ended up raising $7 million and ultimately implode. So get people in your life that can separate themselves emotionally from your business so you know when to quit. Now, I call it, where Scale Factor is really big on, is traction and growth stage companies. So if you've got traction or you're a growth stage, that's where we're going to come in and go, hey, you've proven a product to market fit. Now what it's about doing is going, how do we get this to go beyond you and to get into motions of growth? And that's what I never learned. I would get these product to market fits early in my business career. I didn't know how to get accelerated motions going. I didn't know my numbers. I didn't know really to go, wait a minute, who's my buyer? How's my brand connecting to them? Remember I talked about that first business that saw other revenue streams when I didn't.
Yeah.
We saw a single revenue stream, buy a seat. They were like, buy a seat, we'll take a piece of your transaction, we'll sell your data. I mean, they saw multiple revenue streams or multiple share of wallet from their customer. So if you look at the 7 factors of scale, you're walking through, wait a minute, do you really know who your buyer is and how to communicate to them? I mean, David, I would sell products, literally, CrowdHub, for example. I had customers, HP Global, where I flew to Tel Aviv and sold the CMO over the Mediterranean in a glass of wine. I had nonprofits that were $300,000 a year in revenue. They were both customers because I was in the room, but it wasn't scalable.
Yeah.
Because I can't be everywhere at once. And so as long as I was in the room, I could sell something, but I never really knew who my buyer was. Therefore, my brand was never really amplified to them. Therefore, I never really knew how to create more revenue from my buyer. That's where the 7 factors of scale build. And what I find is when you walk people through, for example, our 28 questions and say, how likely are you to scale? And all of a sudden we can get their scaling score, scalability score. And you go, gosh, a lot of these fundamental questions you haven't nailed. And if you haven't nailed them, you're not going to have a good outcome. And so that's where we really help people be successful with.
Yeah, really, really important. Talk a little bit, in your experience, the difference between scaling a product-based company like physical stuff versus a SaaS company, software, versus scaling the kind of business that you and I have now today, which is more of an advisory, consulting, training company. Are there pros and cons? Are there different answers to the scalability quiz if you're in a product world or a SaaS world or in a trusted advisor world?
So this is a fun way to answer this. Think about racing. What is the number one issue they've got to solve in racing, in speed? What's the number one issue speed has to solve? Friction. The more you can reduce friction, the faster you can go. The more you can reduce friction, the faster you can go. I don't care what business you're in the speed business, you're in the racing business. The same issue that F1 racing has, that Indy cars have, we have. I don't care if you're selling elevators or you're selling, widgets or you're selling consulting. Friction is what has to be solved. And what people do is they spend a lot of time working on their products, working on their services. They don't spend a lot of time working on friction reduction. And so is one harder? Is one easier? Look, I mean, the biggest businesses in the world are selling physical objects and they're selling digital objects. I mean, you've got Boeing, it's selling a freaking airplane. You know what I mean? You've got Amazon I bought a pool floaty that came to my house within an hour yesterday. But why? What is Amazon mastered? There's no friction. So I answer the question back by looking at your business and going, you need to identify all the places where there's friction. And you need to begin to reduce friction. Because the less friction, the faster you're going to go.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So good. I also want to talk about when you're pre-scaling, whatever that means. I guess you should always have scaling in mind, but when you're pre-scaling, you also said something vitally important, which is business owners, for better or for worse, put themselves in the middle of the business. And this reminds me of a coffee shop entrepreneur down in Australia. And the way that he described his business, he had an independent coffee chain of about 35 stores, which is pretty big and certainly pretty big for Australia. And then he did it again and he did it again. And now he's coaching and consulting with other coffee shop owners. The way he tells his story, though, is when I opened my first ever coffee shop, I knew marketing, I knew merchandising, I knew coffee, I knew the landscape. I never worked a day behind the counter because I wanted to build a coffee shop business. I did not want a job in a coffee shop.
There you go. It's a good statement.
So let's talk about with most of the businesses that come to you for guidance, either they're early enough where it's like, hey, it's not too late. We can still, pull this guy or gal out of the center of the nexus. Or the person is in the center of the nexus, but it hasn't gotten big yet. So they can still do some things to kind of do the coffee shop owner without working a day behind the counter. What are some strategies for thinking through that?
Well, I think I love the statement that you made. And so I'll say this to anybody listening. What do you want to do? That's a great first question. Maybe the truth of the matter is when really push comes to shove, you want to work at a coffee shop. And that's why you started the business. And that's okay. So part of it first is just honestly self-evaluation. I've met a lot of business owners that once you get into scale, they're like, wait a minute, I don't want to operationalize this business. I want to run this business. So part of it is self-awareness. What is it that you really want to do and don't want to do? And then in continuing this self-awareness, what are you good at and what are you not good at? Let me give you a fun, vulnerable story. When we brought in these big executives into Juno, they brought in this CFO from the portfolio, and he was this brilliant, numbers CFO guy. And he sent me the first report over. And David, I didn't know how to read it. I was embarrassed. I was like, I don't even know how to read this thing. This looks like something out of Wharton Business School. And I mean, there's graphs everywhere. And I remember I just was like, Josh, if you're going to scale a business, you got to learn. You got to learn this stuff. And so I picked up the phone and I was embarrassed. And I said, Steve, I don't know how to read this thing. And of course he was like, here's how you read it. He couldn't have cared less. He didn't even consider it. So I'll say this, you got to learn how to run your business. Not behind the counter, but if you're behind the counter, it might be because you are embarrassed or you're scared or you don't want to learn how to run the business, how to read the P&Ls, how to understand marketing. You don't have to do it, but you've got to have a domain knowledge. And maybe that's a great way to say it. Like, you don't have to do everything in the business, but you have to have domain knowledge so that you can make decisions. There's your 3Ds right there. So you don't have to do it, but you have to have domain knowledge so you can make decisions. And that was the biggest thing I learned on scale is, hey, I've never scaled a big SDR scale, like a sales team at this level, brought people in and I had to learn. What are the moving parts of it? How are you setting up these motions? How's the funnel working? I remember the first time they sent it over and there was so many stinking acronyms in our sales motion. I'm like, I don't even know what all this means. I need to learn it so I can make decisions in my company. And so that's the big part of your business. If you look at it and go, what are the parts of this business that I don't have enough domain knowledge to make decisions? And let me go get domain knowledge. Domain knowledge is different than doing. That's the difference right there. Yeah. As a leader, if you're going to scale, it's about domain knowledge, not about doing, but you're not going to be able to make decisions if you don't have that.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Such great advice. I know that you have some amazing testimonials on your website. We'll tell people towards the end where to connect with you and some fun things they can do, including the scalability test, so they can kind of figure out where they are. But one of the testimonials is from Michael Hyatt. Can we talk about the Michael Hyatt empire for a quick second?
Sure. Yeah.
So people look at these, online gurus' empires. Yeah. And Michael Hyatt is definitely one of the OG, right? One of the real deal guys in this business. And the thinking is probably, speaking of domain knowledge, I'm sure Michael Hyatt knew how to take his business to tens of millions of dollars. He knew this intuitively. He was a publishing CEO, very smart guy, was all over, every possible source of media. He wrote the book Platform, I think back in 2008, when people were like, platform, what the heck is a platform? But then he comes across you and Chad, and I'm curious, what domain knowledge did he lack? And how did you really throw a lot of beautiful gasoline on his business to make it just zoom into hyperspace?
So I'm going to go back to, some of the things we learned, share of wallet, right? So all of a sudden you're a personality and you're a thought leader, but unless you want to live on a plane and just be a public speaker, there's a ceiling to that. Yeah. So now all of a sudden you got to ask the question, what are people that trust me? What else are they buying that I would be interested in selling them? Okay. So they're buying planners. they're buying coaching, they're buying. So you start to look at these things and go, wait a minute, I would be interested in helping them get organized with their planning. So the planner comes out. I'd be interested in coaching them in how to scale their business. So now the scaling services come out. And so what it is you look at somebody like a Michael Hyatt and you go, hey, what is your audience buying somewhere else that you would like to spend your trust capital selling to them? And that's how you begin to scale individual people. So for him, it was, I've got trust capital. I'm teaching people how to build a platform, but that's an individual thought leader. Those aren't business owners. Or the individual thought leader needs to get organized and they're buying these planners somewhere else. What if we did one and spent our trust capital to sell them that? So again, back to the scale factors, this is create new revenue. It's our C in our factors. Find your buyer, align your brand, create new revenue. So you always are looking at your customer going, what are they buying somewhere else that I'd want to spend my trust capital selling them? And that's where we went in and would help him and other people do stuff like that.
Wow. Really, really fascinating. I want to maybe debunk another myth or just kind of maybe expand a little bit of the simplified version of this. Whenever people hear the word scale, some people, the gut reaction, the knee-jerk reaction is, oh, I got to buy a lot of ads. Everything, Facebook ads, YouTube ads, Google ads, LinkedIn ads. Scale equals ads equals scale. More subscribers, more eyeballs, more visibility, more website traffic, more conversion. Is it true that scale equals ads equals scale? Or how do you handle it and how do you advise your clients?
So it's one of those things where like, the answer is yes. If it wasn't working, nobody would be doing it, right? So it works. But what really matters is where it starts to pay residuals is when what you're doing works. Okay. So if what you're doing isn't working, then eventually the cost is just going to outweigh because you're never going to get the organic underneath it. And so the big thing is, look, do ads work? Sure. But they only work if what you're doing works. Because what happens is somebody gets their scalability score, for example, from us and goes, and it's beautiful. It's a 9-page report where you get what business stage you're in, your scalability score within 7 regions, your business index, how are you stacking up from other businesses at the same size, 21 pieces of advice for each of the factor, which stage you're in, 10-page document. And you go, that was worth it. And then you tell somebody, you're like, look at this cool report I got. And the organic starts to live under the buy. And if you don't get the buy and the organic working together, the buy alone will bleed you dry. Yeah. The buy alone will bleed you dry. But if the buy begins to create organic, then you're going to have enough variables moving to actually build a scalable business.
Yeah, wow.
I mean, you cannot not spend either time, energy, money. You're going to have to spend, but spend wisely. I mean, you see all these groups out there. Listen, I was talking to a marketing guy the other day and he goes, I don't buy into it. But it's a numbers game, right? He's like, look, I'm using AI to generate data. I'm going to sell this data to real estate agents and mortgage brokers for $1,000 a month. Even if it costs me $300 to convert a lead, I'm charging $1,000 a month. So who cares? And he's just literally running a numbers game.
Yeah.
He doesn't care what the business is. It's just numbers. And so there is truth of the numbers. But if you're going to build a real sustainable business, what you do has to work. And you'll see it through the organic traffic that begins to come because people are talking, because people are sharing, because what you're doing is working.
Another thing that surprised me, but in a great way, there's a feeling, right? There's a feeling that every business owner, even every ad, we're talking about ads, there's a feeling that it gives you. And there's an emotional component to what people want to talk about when you talk about, hey, let's add some organic to the paid. There is, creating a hungry market. And you look at many, many thought leaders in all different areas. They don't need to sell their latest book. They have a crowd of people that cannot wait. It's like whatever the next book is, if it has your name on it, I'm buying it. It's already in my Amazon pre-order cart. I'm in. I don't know what it is, Josh. I don't know what it is, dude. Yeah. You got a podcast? I'm your first subscriber. Right. You're coming out with a special report. I'm going to download that and tell 10 of my friends. Talk about what do entrepreneurs either miss completely about this sense of a feeling or an emotional connection. And when they start to get it right, what are some indicator lights on the dashboard that's like, okay, you're starting to get the feeling part the right way?
I think it was Chick-fil-A that somebody coined or I can't remember who it was that coined the raving fans. Maybe it was Kenneth Blanchard, one of them, raving fans.
Yeah.
You've got to give somebody something to rave about.
Yeah.
And not, here's the difference. Are you giving something for somebody to buy? Or are you giving something for somebody to rave about? There's a very big difference between those. And if you're selling something in the ceiling of what you're doing is a purchase transaction, you're probably never going to get to that next layer. So here's this cool thing with Scale Factor. You start with your scalability score, and then we actually have a 600 question and fill in the blank process to build a scaling plan. Think about this. I love this stat. 79% of businesses never started with a business plan. Do you know what they say? How many businesses fail? 8 out of 10.
Yeah.
How many businesses have traction, but they don't have a scaling plan? They're running like those businesses that never had a business plan. So one of the big things I talk about is brand origin story, brand mantra. Like, you don't understand how important it is to have a story, an origin story, and a mantra that customers can go, I can relate to that. I can connect to that. I'm like you. You're like me. And some of the most successful people that I've worked with are able to go, well, you're either a lot like each other or you really want to be like me. These are the ways that these things happen, right? Like my sons and I, we just watched the Air story with Nike.
Yes.
And if you remember, they literally closed out the movie with, sometimes I dream that he is me. You got to see, that's how I dream to be. I dream my move like Mike. I want to be like Mike.
Yeah.
They said, we're going to give you a brand and we're going to bring in a person and you're going to want to be like him. Bo knows. You're going to want to be like Bo. You're going to want to be like Michael. You're going to want to be like these people. So that's one way. And the second one is, or it's the relatability. It's me and you. You're like me. And so business owners have to have that brand story. Patagonia does such a great job at this because let's take personality out of it. We are people that care about our planet. That's why you choose us. And so business owners have to realize there is an emotional connection. Either you want to be like us, we have a shared mission, or we're so much alike, you can relate to me. It's the folksy brand. That's why I like them. I can relate to them. It's the Patagonia. We're on a mission. We believe in the same mission. It's the Nike. I want to be like Mike. Those are all emotional examples of how customers connect to a brand and say, I'm loyal for life.
Hey, if you're loving this episode as much as I am, pop over to doitmarketing.com/manifesto and get your free 37-page download guide to how to sell smarter, sell more easily, sell more often. That's what we're here to help you with at The Selling Show. Off you go.
So if let's say we don't have that going for us right now, and I think you said something that's related to this, which is, the reason I'm communicating with you is to sell you something, right? There's that kind of, no matter how wonderful and valuable and important the thing that you're selling, everything has like a either physical or emotional buy now, right? Buy now, click here, give me your credit card, let's do some business. Talk about the companies that build that emotional connection first. I mean, they still got to keep the lights on. So I'm curious, what's that journey from small business doesn't have the be like Mike DNA? Their messaging, it needs to be emotional messaging within that brand alignment that you talk about. That's also in the assessment, I guess. But it's also, hey, we got to keep the lights on for today. What's the balance? And I'll just leave the one last thing about this question. It's the old Gary Vaynerchuk, right? Jab, 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 right hook. It's like, dude, I got no time for jabs. I got right hook, right hook, right hook, because I need the money today. How do you slow that down and unpack that for someone who wants to be successful and play the long game and the short game at the same time?
I think this is where it comes into being a skilled business leader. I talk a lot about this. I mean, you still have to operate the business. And so, I tell people a lot of times, the best time to start a business is when you have a job and you don't need a paycheck. You don't want to get behind the ball on your company. Now, let's say you are, and you're like, I need money right now. There's a couple things to think about. And I just think this is the truth. Number one, do you have a product to market fit? I mean, do you really? Because if you might not, and you might need to adjust.
Yeah.
I've kind of found that when businesses are cash starved, there's obviously something not working correctly in the business, right? I mean, that's always part of startup, right? I mean, you're always going to spend to get started, but there's something missing in the business. Let me give you an example. There was a day when GoPro, when Red Bull were startups. In fact, GoPro started here in San Diego. They were a client of ours for years, and they built the business with the customers sharing the story. That's how GoPro built it. And so I think you want to look back and go, wait a minute, hold on, let's pause right now. You're not going to freak out, punch your way out of, white knuckle your way out of this business predicament that you're in. If you're cash starved and you're spending more than you're making, there's most likely something's broke in the business. It doesn't mean the business is unfixable, but it means whatever you're doing, it's like the definition of insanity. If you're going to keep doing what you're doing, you're kind of insane. And so whatever's going on that's got you here, you probably need to rethink it so that you don't stay here and get worse. Gosh, David, I've had so many people in my, colleagues, friends I knew along the way, spent so much money on their business, all to go BK, all to let shareholders down. I had friends that took out credit cards and all these different things. You go, at what point in time did you go, wait a minute, it's not supposed to be this hard?
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard, but something's broke here. And so instead of spending more money, instead of panicking more, do the work and go, what's wrong with my business? What do I need to fix in my business? Not where do I need to spend more money? So if you're struggling to keep the lights on, the first thing I would say is there's a great leadership statement that says never make a decision in the dark, never make a decision at night.
Yeah.
Well, anybody listening, have you ever woke up in the middle of the night and just been like, crap, I'm screwed? This is not when you make a decision. But here's the same thing too. If your business is in the dark, or if it's a nighttime in your business, you probably need to pause and go, wait a minute, I need to get awake to my business. I need to get awake to my business, and I need to have a clear thought. Maybe that means bringing in an outsourced resource, a trusted friend, an advisor, whatever it be. Because it's nighttime in my business, and this is not the time to make decisions. I need to get awake to my business so I can make good decisions.
That is so smart. Wow. Well, as we're wrapping up here, we can't possibly end this interview without circling back to something that you said about AI. Yeah. So AI is kind of like the mega disruptor as we're sitting here recording this today. There's all kinds of crazy talk. AI is going to kill all the humans and it's going to wipe out businesses and so forth. And there's a huge opportunity. There's like millions of opportunities driven by AI. When an entrepreneur comes to you for scaling help, either they're not involved in AI at all, they're not even aware of how AI might wipe out their business. And like you said, take them from a $100,000 product to a $10,000 product overnight. Right. And then some folks like, well, I'm using AI, but I'm not sure how to use that as kind of like the X factor in my business. Give us the world according to Josh on AI.
I have a monthly webinar I do with executives, and we had over 1,000 executives sign up last week because I brought on some AI thought leaders and they all wanted to hear about it. My statement is this: collaborate, don't be codependent. Collaborate, don't be codependent. So a lot of people right now are going, how can I be codependent on AI? I think that's a limited thinking. I think, how do I collaborate with AI? How do I use communication tools to collaborate to make me better? How do I use video editing tools to collaborate to make me better? How do I use data research tools to collaborate, make me better? Ask the question, and this is always what I ask, what is the utility that your business drives? So the most successful things in the world are utility. When was the last time somebody reinvented the screwdriver?
Long time.
Never had to. The wheel. It's the epicenter of utility. The damn thing works and it's cheap. Great utility. What is the utility your business delivers? What's the value, the functional value you deliver? How do you automate it? So for us, I know from doing this, the questions you need to be asking to scale your business. I can't possibly sit with you all day long with 1 million people and do this, but I can automate it. And if I can automate it, I can scale it. And then if I can use AI to give you better data and insights, now I've got a flywheel. What is the utility? And how do you collaborate with AI to deliver better automated utility?
Really, really good. Well, Josh Hotsenpiller, how can people get connected and stay connected to more of your brilliance, find out more about the scale factor, find out about how to work with you? What are some links we can drop in the show notes?
Yeah, listen, run over to thescalefactor.com. Check us out there. Get your free assessment. It's an awesome assessment. You're going to get scale to 1 to 100, how likely you are to scale, what business stage you're in, your scaling index, how do you line up to other businesses? Ultimately, your scalability opportunity and how much money you're leaving on the table, as well as for every factor, depending on what stage you're in, we're going to give you 3 pieces of advice. You're going to walk away with 21 actionable thoughts in addition to your likelihood to scale, your index, and revenue you're leaving on the table. We want to help you scale. It's free. So what do you have to lose? Go get your score. If nothing else, you're going to have a data point to look at and make some considerations with our 7 factors of scale. And then follow me on LinkedIn. Have some fun with that.
Excellent. Follow you on link. So we'll have the LinkedIn link. We will have thescalefactor.com link directly under this episode at thesellingshow.com. Josh, thank you so much for dropping value bomb after value bomb after value bomb. Folks are going to have to re-listen a second time, possibly a third time with pen and paper and your scalability score in front of you.
Right.
And then connect with Josh on LinkedIn and you can take your operation to the moon. So Josh, thank you so much, my friend. I appreciate you.
Pleasure was mine. Thanks, David.
And that wraps up another episode of The Selling Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, tell a friend, go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thesellingshow.com. See you next time.